World War II. The causes of World War II were militarism, imperialism, nationalism, and totalitarianism. That spells out mint, if that helps you remember. In the 1930s, Italy, Germany, and Japan aggressively sought to build up new empires. They started to take over their neighbors throughout Europe, North Africa, and Asia. The League of Nations was created after World War I to stop this. It was supposed to stop any future wars. But because the US and Russia did not join it, it was very, very weak. And so the League of Nations could not stop what Italy, Germany, and Japan were doing. Western countries were recovering from a Great Depression in the 1920s and did not want any more war. As a result of this, many of the acts of aggression that occurred, especially in Germany and in Japan, were allowed to go unchecked because nobody wanted to start a fight. Nobody had the guns, the weapons, or the people to set off and fight another war. In Asia, Japan was taking over islands all throughout the area. They also were attacking China because, remember, Japan has no natural resources, and so in order to get ready for a war, they must take from other countries. The militaristic leader of Japan, Tojo, seized the Chinese territory of Manchuria. When the League of Nations condemned the action and tried to basically ask them to give it back, Japan just said no and withdrew its membership from the League of Nations. And that was the final straw. People knew that the League of Nations could not stop what was going on during this time. The strengthening military Japan invaded China's mainland in 1937. They established a puppet government in the city of Nanjing. Now, a puppet government is the Chinese were put in control, but they must listen to what the Japanese told them, because the Japanese were the true invaders and they were controlling everything going on in the area of Nanjing. Their invasion of the city was so brutal it became known as the Rape of Nanjing. And you can see there in the picture, those are literally the heads of Chinese people that the Japanese army came in and they used to chop off all their heads. It was a horrible, horrible time for the people of Nanjing, and the Chinese government has still not forgiven Japan for what it did, even though it was well over 50 years ago, and they want a public apology, which the Japanese government will not give them, and they still have a strained relationship because it was just so devastating to the Chinese people. Now, Italy, run by Mussolini, attacked Ethiopia in northern Africa. Now you can see there in the picture the Ethiopian army used basically bows, arrows, swords. They had very limited weapons, guns, that kind of idea. And when the Italian army attacked, they could not fight them off. They could not fight them off. They had tried, but they were no match for them. Now, this was the first time in history that Ethiopia had been conquered. Ethiopia was the only country during the Conference of Berlin, during the first wave of imperialism, that did not fall to European powers because they were always able to fight off the European powers. But Italy attacked with so much gunfire, so much industrialized weapons, that the Ethiopian army could not fight back. The Ethiopian king appealed to the League of Nations, and the League agreed to stop selling weapons and other war materials to Italy. And you can see there a picture of Mussolini, the leader of Italy during this time. He was a fascist who believed that Italy should fight for world domination. Even though the countries agreed not to sell to Italy any more armaments, they did not honor that agreement because, remember, the economy was very, very bad, and if a country could find a way to make some money, they took it. And so even though they promised they weren't going to sell to the Italians, many countries still sold to them just because they were in such dire need for the money. Now, in Germany, Hitler and the Nazi Party had taken over. And Hitler glorified war as a way of restoring German national pride. Remember, Hitler was a nationalistic leader. He believed that the power and strength of Germany must come back. And he taught the people that the Treaty of Versailles was very unfair and that they must rise up and bring back the greatness of the mother country of Germany. And you can see there in the map that starting in 1938, he started going to his neighbors and just taking them over. You know, the Rhineland in 1936, the Sudetenland in 1938, and the people in those countries begged for help. They begged France, they begged the United States, they begged for Britain, please help us. And nobody wanted to get involved in another war. So they just kind of let Hitler do what he wanted to do. They told him you should stop, but he didn't listen. Hitler rebuilt the German army in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. In 1936, Hitler sent troops to the Rhineland, which is on the border of France. This violated the Treaty of Versailles, and the Rhineland is a very rich area with iron ore, timber, and other natural resources. So Hitler needed this little piece of land in order to build up his weapons and to strengthen his army and his economy in Germany. In 1938, Hitler made Austria part of Germany. He also forced Czechoslovakia to give him a borderland called the Sudetenland, which was another area very rich in natural resources. Now, the Austrians didn't want to fall. The Czechoslovakians were begging people to help them because they didn't want to give the land to Germany. And France and Britain were starting to get involved, starting to basically tell Hitler back off. Nobody, unfortunately, was using any real power, though. This led to a policy of appeasement. And appeasement is when you give in to a bully when he promises he won't mess with you again. So Hitler said, just give me what I want and I'll stop taking things. Unfortunately, he lied. And even though the nations kept giving in to his aggressive demands, he never truly kept peace. The Western democracies responded weakly to the German aggression. They were all pacifist. Pacifism means peaceful. They didn't want another violent war. In 1938, there was the Munich Conference in Munich, Germany, and the Western democracies agreed to let Germany keep control of the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. Hitler signed papers that said he promises he will not be any more aggressive, he's not going to take any more land, and he will be a good boy and play well with the other countries in Europe. We now know, obviously, that was a lie, that he didn't plan on ever doing that. World War II begins. Japan, Italy, and Germany formed together the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis, or the Triple Axis. These nations agreed to fight communism and to allow for foreign conquests. Basically, their goal was to fight communism and to take over as much land as they could wherever that land was. And they were going to help each other do it. Now, Hitler and Stalin made an agreement in 1939 called the Nazi-Soviet Pact. A pact is an agreement, which meant peace between each other. Now, Hitler had full intentions of attacking the Soviet Union. This pact was just made to allow him to have more time to build up his army to fight the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union had, during this time, the largest put-together army in the world. So he did not want to mess with Stalin right away. He just wanted to buy time until he could get his army in ready to go. And eventually Hitler would turn around and attack the Soviet Union, and Stalin was caught off guard because he really believed Hitler was not a liar. And of course, as we know, Hitler was. Later in 1939, Germany invaded Poland. This was called the Blitzkrieg War. Poland's lack of natural barriers allowed the German army to quickly overturn any resistance. Poland, for the most part, it's all flat, good farming land. There is no big mountains. There's no deep rivers. It's just flat land, and literally the German army rolled on into Poland and took it. The Polish people tried to fight back, but there was nothing to fight back with. They just didn't have the numbers and the army ready to do that. Finally, after Germany invaded Poland, Britain and France responded by declaring war on Germany, and World War II had officially begun. And you can see there from the map that Hitler's plan was complete domination of Europe, and he wanted to completely take over the world. That was his goal, and you can see on the map that he was very close when it comes to Europe. He had taken over a lot of land.